Thank you. All right. Oh, you know what? Give me a sec. I do need to accept more people. Hold on. Great. All right. So good evening. I'm Vivian Mao. Welcome to our member spotlight. So it's so glad to see familiar faces and new friends in the room. That's exactly what we're here for. The Gies iDegrees Bay Area community exists to create spaces for meaningful friendships to grow. The member spotlight is our way to go beyond resumes to really understand each other's paths and aspirations. And my hope is that opportunities, partnerships, and friendships naturally emerge from that. One thing I really love about this community is how it keeps surprising me. So every month I get the chance to pull back the curtain on the depth of the talent sitting quietly in our network. And tonight is no exception. Our guest this evening is someone who has been doing the hard, unglamorous work of protecting our planet long before ESG became a boardroom buzzword. Eeda Wallbank spent nearly 2 decades on the ground, literally responding to environmental emergencies, cleaning up contaminated sites, and navigating some of the most complex due diligence challenges across Asia, the US, and beyond. And talking about going different places, you know that Eeda is really the definition of a global citizen, and her work has real stakes. You know, the kind where communities, ecosystems, and billion-dollar deals all hang in the balance. So I'm very proud to say Eeda is our very first female spotlight speaker. And I promise she won't be the very last. So Eeda is so glad to have you here tonight. So there are a few housekeeping notes. First is we were gonna, as I mentioned, the format will be an interview followed by some open Q&As. And this session will be recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And I believe, Eeda, you have dropped your LinkedIn in a chat, right? So we connect with her. And so before we get started, I would very much like everybody to open your mic and your camera to talk about yourself a little bit. 30 seconds, your name, where you are, and what you like to get out of this. Okay, so 30 seconds. All right, so Larry, you are the very first on my screen. So why don't you go ahead first?
Awesome. So my name is Larry. I am in the IMBA program, started in August, a little bit recent. I am the income, or technically now the new executive VP of the Graduate Business Association. So getting kind of involved to fun and great experience. So met a lot of you. I think Simone, Simon, I feel like you're the new person, but I feel like we're connected. I want to say also congrats. I think you also got a new role recently. I want to think it was MIT. Like I said, seeing new faces, a lot of familiar faces. But yeah, excited to hear from you, Anita, and learn a little bit about your experience.
Cool, thank you. And Moises?
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, I don't get cut off here on the train. So, about to graduate from the IMBA and recently just retired out of the Army. I started my new position as Intuitive Surgical as an assistant product manager. And what I'm seeking out of this is really just to do the new connections and do something different that I wouldn't typically do outside of the Army. So, to new beginnings.
Cool. Thank you. Irina? Can you hear us?
Yes. Right. So, I'm sorry. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yeah. So, my background in healthcare, and I would like to have my future career in healthcare consulting and management. And I'm very excited to hear what is today meeting is about, and looking forward to meet your members.
Awesome. Thank you. Simone? Oh, you are
Yeah,
muted.
hi, Simone Cavallaro. Yes, I'm based in Boston area, and very recently, as someone already said, I'm still a student. I graduating in December, started in 2023 October, and I recently joined the MIT as the executive director of a research center there. Was used to be based in Chicago, so and this is what I do on a Friday night typically. So that's why I'm here.
We're glad to have little friends and enemies, I'm sorry, from other schools. That's great. We look forward to hearing more from you about what MIT is doing. Okay, great. Hi, Derek. Whoops, I think you're muted for some reason. Oh, can't really hear you for some reason. All right. You know what? Let me go to the next one while you get your tech worked out. It happens all the time like that. All right, Fizzle. Hello.
Hey, can you hear me? Can you see
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Yeah, so my name is Vitali. I'm an MBA student. I started in October 2024. I'm doing product management in Bay Area, like super busy. I'm so glad I could join this call.
Yes.
Haven't seen you guys for a while. Simone, great to see you. Right, we met during
Likewise.
iConverge.
Yep.
So glad you are at MIT. It's a nice place to be. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And then how about Sam? Sam is our AI expert here. Hi, Sam. Can you talk now? Okay. How about we move to Sora?
So, Vivian, sorry,
Okay,
I was trying to unmute. I mean, so, yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sam Venkatesh. I'm just based out of Michigan area, Ann Arbor, Michigan. So, yeah, I actually looking forward to graduate from my MBA like next week. So I'm almost done with the program. Yeah, again, so I will be in Urbana-Champaign like this coming week. And yeah, again, I'm glad to be part of this community. I mean, again, thanks Vivian for hosting all these events and keeping us busy, right? Yeah, and so yeah, again, like so the one thing that I would like to get out of this is like basically it's a community that we come to back each other up. I mean, all the time, and so just sharing whatever our experiences and our career achievements, and yeah, also like sharing our knowledge. And this is a great community to be part of it. So I'm just like again, yeah, would like to learn something new every day, and just glad to be part of this community.
That's so nice of you. Thank you. Thank you. I know you have been doing a lot of work for the community as well. So I'm really happy to have you. Thanks. Hey, so Rob, you up?
Hey everyone, Saurabh Shetty. I am in the Bay Area, completed my IMBA 2024 and currently working at Genentech, heading up our data strategy and acquisition. Yeah, looking forward to hearing Eeda talk about her experience. Met Eeda and Derek a few times, so looking forward to learning more about them.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So, hi, Jim.
Hey, yeah, I am also on the GBA with Larry. I am the incoming VP of membership. I work in the power utility industry, so somewhat adjacent to the ESG, and I am currently starting a founder of a startup. Started a couple months ago. I'm working on solving organizational change management with AI. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to hearing what Eeda has to say.
Cool. Great. So, Derek, it doesn't sound that your audio is gonna work. So I'm just going to get Eeda started. Would that be all right? Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
he says yes. We're in the same room in case anyone wondered.
and wonder. Okay. All right. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. So how about Eeda? Why don't you tell us a little, kick this off by telling us more about you?
Sure. So obviously I'm Eeda Wallbank. Never mind just the W in my name there. My LinkedIn is in the chat. In the Bay Area now, just moved here last June, so coming up on a year here pretty quickly. Have graduated the IMSM, and Sam, I might not see you next week because we're also flying in for commencement. So might see you in Champaign-Urbana on that day. That'll be really fun. My day job when is I'm an environmental consultant. I've been doing this for almost 20 years now, and the main sweeping goal of everything that I've tried to do over the course of my career is literally just try and make the world a better place. But because I do that as a consultant, I don't do it for free. There is a significant tie between sustainability, ESG, and long-term goals, and how that's monetized and how it's earned or how it's spent. And it's been exceedingly helpful for me through the Gies program and the MSM, and getting to know all of you to further understand just how strong that connective tissue is between sustainability, ESG, consulting, and long-term business development. That's the business side of me. I mean, I'm sure we'll go into more detail. Vivian's got some really great questions lined up.
Yeah.
On a personal note, I am exceedingly stubborn, so I run the slowest marathons allowable that still let you get a medal. So if anyone's ever thinking about going for a run and worried, I'm not too fast, don't worry, you're still faster than me, and it's a lot of fun. Most of the time to do a marathon.
Cool, thank you, Eeda. I remember there is a September event, right? So I already signed up for that. You and Derek mentioned that. So
yes.
we'll be there. Thank you. So tell us one thing that, you like people to know about you, and one thing you wish people wouldn't assume. Basically, we know that you and Derek share the same last name, so we'll kind of guess the relationship. But I want to, why don't you just go ahead and tell us?
Sure. Well, I mean, the easiest thing is obviously Derek and I are like, the next generation of Gies power couple. Like,
I like that.
You can't see his camera right now, but at least in this moment, he thinks I'm funny. But it's been through our careers are very different. He's a journalist, I'm a scientist. He did the MBA first, then I came in and did the MSM. It's actually really helped both of us, I think, to see this cross connectivity and how interconnected things are. But I think also you all would have seen that over the course of your programs. So I guess I'd say the one thing on a professional level or in the implementation level that I would hope that people wouldn't assume is that, like, environmental work or ESG or sustainability, it's not just a buzzword we're throwing around in media or trying to troll people or greenwashing. It's real work. What you see out in the world when somebody says sustainability and puts up a really pretty, one-page flyer about how they've reduced their carbon emissions, there are years worth of unglamorous work and data analysis and gathering that went into that. And I think that's something that people aren't really understanding, that this work can be really, really challenging to pull together and then have it be defensible. So if somebody's taking the time to, in your own business or in your own lives to try and make that connection, most of the time they've got decades worth of data behind them.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, we kind of just always look at the service side without understanding the real work behind it. So thanks for sharing that. And you have built your career across the US and Southeast Asia and in several companies too. So what's the common thread that ties all these experiences together? And what made you going deeper into environment consulting rather than pivoting?
Well, let me start with answering the last part first. I'm one of those kids who kind of always knew what I was going to be when I grew up, that I wanted to work in environmental science. I didn't know that I was going to be a consultant necessarily, but I fell into a contaminated river during a cleanup and never looked back.
Wow.
That's literally what happened. The Rouge River in Livonia, we were doing studies as part of middle school, and I fell in November, and that was just, it changed my whole life. And I, at that point, spent a lot more time studying science, how it interacts with humans, our daily life, and what it means for the ecology. At the time, I thought I was going to grow up and go work for the state or a not-for-profit. But I graduated my first degree in 2005, and then into the teeth of the first economic crisis. So there was no roles for that. So I was very lucky. I got my first consultancy job sometime after that. And in doing that work, I realized that some of the misconceptions that I'd had about what it meant to be an environmentalist were incomplete. And as I was saying before, like the assumptions that a lot of folks may have about what this work is, I walked into this industry with that. I thought I was going to save the bees and the bunnies, and it was all going to be better. But once I realized how much more detailed it is, what it means for a business, an industry, and even just transportation of products, because I've done a significant amount of work with the rail industry, it added challenge to how to make improvements to both sustain what we need as humanity, but also to preserve as much as we're able to. And that challenge drove the exceedingly stubborn side of me to want to do this more. And the more anyone would say that climate change wasn't real or humans couldn't have an impact, the more it mattered to me that we had to keep doing this kind of work, because eventually the facts were going to demonstrate that this was real, and more people would believe, and we'd have a better opportunity to make sustainable changes and differences.
Well, Eeda, I can really see the passion that you have for your work, and it's not very common that people know what they wanted to do when they were very young. So that's really hats off to you. Before we get the next question, and I actually want everybody to participate first. So as an investor, all right, when a new opportunity lands on your desk, what lens do you immediately apply? Sustainability, returns, risk? So would you mind giving us maybe 1 or 2 words on what you think in the chat? I personally will look at about like risk and returns. For me, right, so would everybody chime in a little bit? So let's say, again, if you have this investment opportunity for you right there, and then what would you first think about it? Would approach that?
Stealing my lines.
Okay, 2 more seconds. Okay, so it looks like I am leading that as a risk returns with the first priority or first thing that will come to my mind, right?
My vote is for a return. Sorry, I'm driving, so I can only talk.
Okay, no problem. Cool. So yeah, and I think, as an investment, of course, we want to see returns, right? But so Eeda, you kind of see what we talked about here already. What have you seen, your actual experience, and what advice you present to your clients with when you are facing this same question?
Right, and this is one that comes up much more frequently now, because investors are always worried about risk and potential rate of return, but what is included in the risks that they're considering has expanded. It used to be, even up until maybe even 5 years ago, as recently as that a due diligence for an investment or a mergers and acquisition might have just been legal and financial. That's it. Those were the two legs of your ladder that you stood on. But recently, and some of this is driven by sustainability funds or financial enterprises that have set out now publicly their own sustainability goals, we're seeing requests that early on in the diligence, there are now 3 consultants called when somebody's looking at an investment. It's still financial, it's still legal, but it's environment and compliance, like regulatory compliance and sustainability goal compliance. So it's not a ladder of risk anymore, it's a 3-legged stool. And all 3 of us work together to really create a holistic view of what the actual complete risk or more complete risk is for a potential investment. And when you're looking at environmental risk, you're looking at the present, which is, really straightforward, the things that we can see and handle. Have they had a spill? Do they have health and safety issues? Are their permits and licenses correct and up to date? Have they had violations? That's all easy to handle. Well, can be easy to handle. There's a lot of data there. The other part of this is where it gets a little bit more esoteric, where the investor has to have an idea of what their own goals are. And I'm just going to use, say, the World Bank as an example here. Obviously none of us is the World Bank, but they have set out very clear standards and expectations for what it means to be an ESG type of investment. And they've broken this out into really key parameters. Things like, is there an environmental management and action plan? Does this company even know what their own situation is from an environmental and social perspective? Have they fully addressed health and safety, both locally and to benchmark national standard or global standards for whatever they're doing? They look at biodiversity, social impacts, how energy is gained or used. I don't know if I said waste already, but how waste is generated, handled, recycled. Indigenous peoples in global projects, the presence of indigenous communities can have a significant play on the risk to an investment from an ESG perspective. And that's not to say that you can't invest in those projects, but you have to ensure that you're taking protective actions, that you're not harming indigenous peoples, populations, communities. So the idea of what is risk has gotten bigger and both easier and sometimes harder to quantify. And what we try and do is define what that is, and work with the client to understand what can be done to ensure that global standards for mitigating those risks are implemented, or if it's a deal breaker to the project, which can happen.
So Eeda, you are saying that the list of risks is expanding and growing and much bigger, and it involves a lot more. Okay, got it. So those are the considerations that we might at least now can see and kind of know, right? But how about those they called emergent contaminants, right? Because those are those chemicals and materials previously undetected or unregulated, and then if we don't know, then it will be harder to guard against, right? So what would you recommend for things like that?
Right. And emergent contaminants definitely play a very interesting role in risk identification and assessment. To some extent, we can see a little bit how regulatory environments are changing. There are some really famous examples of emerging contaminants. In the early 2000s, it was a product called 1,4-dioxane, which tends to be associated with like volatile organic chemical releases and challenges around those. The most famous one at the moment, and you'll have seen this in the news, is the family of chemicals called PFAS. And it's a very large family of chemicals. It's used for a variety of beneficial uses in humanity, but we're starting to get a better understanding of what it means to be in drinking water or in the environment, and what its presence potentially may do to impact humanity or ecology. And microplastics is another excellent example of emerging contaminants. Thanks, Valerie, for catching that one. That is another great one. And the biggest thing to think about with emerging contaminants is the data is still being collected. The analyses are still being done. Some very, very smart people globally are trying to figure out how much is too much, how much is dangerous, and is there something that we can do to remove it if we need to? And, the regulatory environment's trying to figure out how to set standards so that we all know how clean is clean enough. It's a very challenging environment, and when we have that come up as a risk to a prospective investment or a site, it takes a fair bit of additional conversation. Like, we have to understand, is it there or not? Do we understand its extent or the potential implications? Is the government involved, depending on what country you're operating in? So if you have an area with emerging contaminants, you tend to have to expect significant more conversation and a lot more data gathering.
Wow. So that's even more work. Okay, got it. Before I move into other more non-ESG related questions, do you have anything that you would like us to know as an end user or as business owner about ESG?
Something for me to what should every business owner know about ESG?
Right.
Anyone who's trying to sell you a one-size-fits-all solution to your business probably doesn't know you. It's implementing ESG in your investments, in your business, what sustainability means to you from a business perspective is deeply personal. And you've got to understand what you're trying to accomplish and why, and what that means for your workflows. But there's infrequently a one-size-fits-all solution.
I see. So it does need a lot more data gathering and discussions and things like that. Okay, got it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your experience as a global citizen. I mean, basically you work across 10 plus countries in Asia, and a lot of that is, remote, and we all got experience during COVID, but then continue to do that. So Annie, what did that experience tell you about adaptability and how it will change your work today? And you just mentioned something very interesting about discussion. So it sounds like communication is a very big part of the work too.
It is. Communication is everything. The written word and the spoken word, so much of what we do, because it can draw political fire. There are a lot of views about this, and it can be, it can lead to disagreements in our normal everyday life. But communication is how we get the clarity that we need to drive the business goals forward. Because everything really that I'm trying to do is with the understanding that sustainability and successful business can happen together. Like, you can have a successful business and have it also be sustainable. You don't have to be wasteful or wantonly destroy particular environments just because you could, which, is a bit of the legacy of the Industrial Revolution. But we're not those people anymore. We have the capacity to make better decisions and still figure out how to make it profitable.
It is totally so relevant now, especially there are a lot of discussions about data centers and have seen a lot of pushback for that, of course, for business reasons, for employment reasons, but also for environmental reasons. So we'll look forward to hearing maybe from you about all this going forward. All right. So for those inspired by your journey and probably would like to pivot into this area, what your recommendation would be?
I think keep asking questions. The core of my business enterprise within my company is what I call compliance and due diligence. It's asking questions. It's digging deeper. It's making sure that I understand how a business or an investment or a site is operating, so that I can fully understand what the risks might be to the environment or to the surrounding community. If somebody's coming at this from not having a science background, it can be challenging. It really can. And if somebody's actually looking to jump into consultancy, feel free to message me on the side. I'm happy to have more conversation on it. I will say it is exceedingly helpful to have some kind of scientific background to do environmental consultancy. You don't have to be PhD level to do it. You don't have to be an engineer or a geologist, but having an understanding, even a broad level understanding of, how earth chemistry works, groundwater, enough to know when you need to keep asking more questions or get your PhD people on the phone.
Cool. Get some expert support for sure.
Mhm.
Got it. And so I think I forgot to ask you, I mean, you are about to graduate, right? Obviously.
Mhm.
So congratulations again. And we almost would like to do this session with your cap and gowns on next week, but we changed the time. And so anyway, so what you think about this MBA, how that has been helpful to you?
Mhm. So it's having the MBAs actually really helped me find the words to describe to business folks what I'd been seeing in the industry, because I didn't have the vocabulary. I think Derek alluded to this in the chat, stealing my lines. It's, what does it mean to do ESG? And in the early parts of my career, what I was seeing is that, before ESG, we called it environmental health and safety. And everyone, you just followed the law for that. That was it. You just followed the law and that's what you did. And there was no necessarily added value to go above and beyond whatever the law was requiring you to do. And it was fine. You met your legal requirements. There's nothing wrong with that. But there was no incentive to go beyond. Then the vocabulary changed. We get sustainability, we get ESG, we have conversations about what it means to have a business as part of a community and really, connect that business to the community, not just through jobs, but how do you manage your environmental risks, or if there's an incident, and how do you do that communication? Or how does the business support the community outside of just providing jobs, but to build up and improve its surroundings? And that idea is a little bit what started, I think, some of what we now call a bit of greenwashing. I'm just going to say that I'm doing these things, but nobody's really back checking it. I can say that I'm sustainable. I can say that I'm recycling, but nobody's checking it, and you don't really know. And then we had the backlash against that, right? It was all over the news. A lot of folks got their wrist slaps on that pretty hard. And now we're all skeptical. We're all very skeptical of what it means to do this. So when you're in a business setting, it's the idea that, environmental social governance isn't a nice to have. That used to be the mindset. If I have money, I'll spend it, but I have no incentive. Or I'll fudge around the lines and I'll say that I am, but I'm not really. We're well past that now. The businesses that are really being successful are like, this is not a nice to have. I need to have this. This is now a part of my bottom line. This is a part of my overhead costs. How do I convert those overhead costs into profitable dollars, and how do I communicate that to my end users? The businesses that are being successful, and this is where the MSM has helped provide me a stronger business vocabulary, is that, being shown, demonstrating that you're meeting higher standards for ESG and sustainability adds real value to your product, value that can be monetized because your customers want it if they can believe you. And MSM has helped give me that language, because in science they don't teach you business, they teach you science. And I didn't have the vocabulary, but now I feel that it's I'm able to reach the investors, the industry side of it, the non-scientists, and communicate with them in a language that they understand, so that we're all aiming for that goal together, because they want to be sustainable, but they also need to demonstrate that there's actual value that goes with that.
In investments, a risk is having risk is normal. but not being able to underwrite that particular risk is bad, because then you wouldn't know your downside, right? So understanding risk and understand how to underwrite it and how to manage that, it has become a very huge part of business for sure. So thank you for sharing that. So we're coming to the last question. So how would you like us to contribute to your continued success, and how would you like to be part of the community?
Well, I'm exceedingly grateful for the Bay Area's group. It has been a massive help for us in building community and friendship since we moved here. So I want to thank everyone on this call for that. So I think what I'm hoping to continue to grow from this, and also what I'm hoping to be able to offer into the group is I have an understanding that what I do can be very different than what a lot of other folks do in the group. And we've touched on a lot of topics during this call, but only very lightly at a very high level. And what I'd like to offer is that, if in the course of your life or your business, this is a question for you, please just contact me and we can have a conversation about it and see if there's something that can be done there to support you as you're trying to figure out, whatever your next step is, but getting a handle on what you are starting to see as an ESG or sustainability risk.
Got it. Great. Thank you so much, Eeda. That's really helpful. I'm glad to get to know a lot more about you and your work. So that's kind of ends of all my prepared questions and your answers. And I'm going to open the forum to anybody who has questions for you. You guys can just go ahead and read. Oh, okay. Jim, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Super interesting stuff. I am curious on your thoughts on, I mean, this is very generic, but I think it's a Peter Thiel-backed company where they're planning on putting data centers in the ocean and data centers in space and things like that. We have ESG heavy land constraints and space, and communities that don't want that on the land. And now it's like, okay, we'll just go in the ocean. It's like free real estate. And, that's not a very easy challenge to accomplish. And I have, maybe some like sci-fi thoughts where that could be kind of cool. I suppose if the ocean levels are going to rise, maybe we'll see cities on the ocean. I don't know. But as far as like, your particular side of things, I'm curious on your thoughts on how that's going to really pan out.
All right, I'm gonna put a pin on the space one because I'm not.
Oh, sure. Yeah, ocean was
the
space was just a secondary. Yeah.
No, but I haven't seen this particular fund, but I know that there have been conversations around the idea of data centers, in shallow ocean. It's technically not free real estate. And if you think about it, I mean, every country, of course, will have their own requirements for what it means to be an offshore product. And you see this with offshore wind turbines, that there are quite a few regulations around infrastructure offshore. From a cooling perspective, it could be really interesting because, of course, data centers depending on how they're designed, they could use a lot of water and electricity in just maintaining temperature. But if you're in the ocean and the ocean is cold and it's circulating around your structure, does that have an impact on your energy usage, or is that being supplemented by now you've got to keep your data center dry? Like the engineering behind that, I am not across by any stretch of the mind. But is something like that possibly theoretically possible? If the engineering can figure it out, the regulatory environment will probably be lagging on it because nobody would have done it already. But there are offshore works that could be used as guidelines, or subsea cables that cross international boundaries that both run cables from land to ocean to land. So there are guidelines to follow on that. And pretty much every place that I've worked that I can think of has some pretty strong regulatory requirements for doing environmental assessments and impact statements. And throughout the course of construction, for like a subsea cable, for example, how do you do that construction without significantly impacting the environment? And that's a highly regulated activity. So I think if somebody's going to do it, it's going to be a highly regulated activity.
Definitely. Cool. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Larry?
Great chat. Learn quite a bit. I'm curious, as an outsider, you often kind of read, hey, we're doing sustainability, we have ESG goals, etc. I'm curious what that translates to from like a stakeholder perspective. Like, who do you kind of work with? Is it like product managers? Is there kind of different departments? Like, how do kind of different companies, how does that kind of differ? Do they set like legal compliance, operations? And maybe lastly, how has that possibly changed from like in the last 20 years? Before, I kind of mentioned before, it was just kind of following the laws and regulating. Now it seems like a more conscious goal. How has that potentially kind of shifted from a kind of organizational perspective in terms of who is responsible, like what that goal structure looks like, et cetera?
No, and that's a great question too, because I think that there has been a shift here that historically, environmental or health and safety or ESG might have been seen as a bottom-up push. Like all the folks on the ground who are doing the work, they're pushing this information upward. Their manager, their manager, their manager, and hopefully eventually the board or the CEO. The really successful ones that are happening now is that before any of these goals are even publicly posted, the highest level of the business is on board with this. Because in order to really have success, the idea of what sustainability is going to ultimately touch pretty much every department that you have. So what does it mean for them? How do you roll that out? Some things might be really straightforward. We're going to switch all of the light bulbs in our warehouse from fluorescent to LED. That's really easy to quantify in terms of reducing carbon footprint. But if you're talking about a culture of we're going to switch from print to digital, well, how does that work? And when you've got maybe a few hundred folks who really like paper, how do you implement that cultural shift to grow towards the change that you're looking for? So your key stakeholders are going to be in the C-suite and the folks who are in position to implement the changes that you're looking to do. But it's in order to be really successful, stakeholder identification is one of the first things that you've got to start thinking through. Because if you miss somebody, like if you need your CEO, but nobody talks to the CEO until marketing puts the flyer out, you might have a difficulty.
That makes total sense. Thank you.
Very interesting. Anybody? If not, I actually have one question. So Eeda, what's the most interesting or rewarding experience that you have from your work? And people talk about having value at their work. Yeah. So I think you probably very high on that one.
Yes, it's shifted over the years. Earlier in my career, it was a little bit easier to identify because something bad would have happened. There would have been a spill or an incident, and you can see the problem on the ground. If it's bad enough, you can see the problem on the news. And working one of those sites, as I've had the opportunity to do, to go in on day zero when it's at its worst, and then to be in one case for me, the last person walking off that site. Like it was, go out there, verify that it's done, take the photos, get the last samples, and to remember what it was like when you got there, and then to see it fixed, like properly fixed, is really one of the most rewarding things that I've ever done in my career. Now that I'm a little bit older, I'm not in the field as much as I used to be. I miss it, except when I get sent out and then get rained on. But now it's when I'm looking for risk, and either I find something that nobody's found before. Like if somebody had looked but didn't see it, but then I went and looked and I found it. And if I find a risk that is meaningful to the deal, that has a positive impact on my client, that they can make a decision that protects them and the deal because of something that I found, I feel pretty good about that.
That's great. That's great. And looking around, I know that there's so much pessimistic view about the future and about the environment and about everything. So especially for your job, you were really looking into the possibility of how things might go wrong, right? Yeah. So can you offer us some optimistic view about the future as part of your job?
I am optimistic, because when we look to identify these risks, it makes us make better decisions so that the risk becomes less, or that we can mitigate it. We run climate risk assessments on prospective properties all the time. Is it in a 10-year floodplain, a 100-year floodplain? What would happen with sea level rise? Well, if we identify now a space that's not going to be proper to build in, because it would lead to a release or an incident in the future if and when it ever flooded, well, we can go find a better place to put it. We can work with the client, and we can look to build sustainably and in places that are going to last, and also build to kind of survive the changing world. I mean, humans have had an impact on the environment. I think that is completely fair to say, and we're going to continue to have an impact on the environment, but there's always an opportunity for that impact to be positive. And as long as we're still looking and we're still trying, that you can see where there's an opportunity for things to get better. But we have to also account for the social, looking out for the environment, but also the social impacts. And that's something that, like, as humanity, we have to keep doing.
Well, that's a very positive note. So there is a solution for sure. That's in your work. Right. So, okay. I don't have any further questions. Maybe Eeda, you want to read a little bit of the text or in the chat? There's anything that you wanted to respond? If not,
I think Derek has just dropped a couple of links, which I will not actually respond to. Those are beverage conversations about he's posted some videos from some of the sites that I've worked at previously. So.
Well, yeah, we're gonna check on them. Sure. Okay. Anything else? If not, I think Gitika just joined, but we are about to leave. So anything else? If not, we'll have to stop today right here. And anything? Okay. So thanks again, Eeda, for sharing your story. And I'm so glad that we end at a very positive note. So the more that we work on this, the better it will be. And I really appreciate everybody for joining today. And if there's anything, please reach out to Eeda and me for this. And thanks again for joining today.
Thank you, Vivian, for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Oh, a very pleasure. Thank you, Eeda. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.